Hi everyone, I'm Jodi Barrows with the Square and a Square, and I want to welcome you to my Square and a Square Facebook page. If you're new to this Square and a Square page, remember to hit like and follow and go in and set your settings so that every time we have a live teaching session, you'll be able to be notified and know about it and won't miss. So often I just decide I have time to do this and I jump in and do it. It seems like every time I say I'm going to do this on a certain day at a certain time, then something happens that delays that. So I'm kind of a spontaneous live, and I guess that's what live is all about. Now, last summer, I started a series that I called the Square in a Square Option Overview Book. And in these classes, I went through the different options of the Square in a Square system. Because the Square in a Square system is so amazing and so unique in that you have one ruler and you have one tool, and you learn how to master that, and you make every triangle unit that you want. You can make them any size, and of course, any color with any fabrics that are your favorites. It's really very unusual in the quilting world to have one tool that makes everything. And this one tool I've had for almost 30 years. So for 30 years, we have been making quilts using the Square in a Square system, which is very simple, very fast, very fun, very fabulous, and I always say finished, because your work looks great and you stay motivated and you actually finish your work. I have students in my premium club that make quilts every week. They're turning out another quilt and another design after learning the Square in a Square system. And it's very simple to do. Everything just starts out with a square in the middle with your strips on the side. You have one tool, one ruler that you trim it up with, no matter what color, no matter what size, and no matter what triangle unit you need. You're going to recognize square and a square and flying geese and half square triangles, and all of those are the different options that we can make. We actually now have 40 options. That means 40 different triangle units that you can get, all starting out just like this. And the cool thing is that everybody can cut squares and strips and sew them together. And the way that you lay the ruler on here to trim them up, you're going to get very clean, precise work. I always say that because the human is doing the work here, the human element, the 4 sides of cutting and the 4 sewings and the 2 pressings, that's the human element. And that's where you're going to lose your precision, is in the cutting, sewing, and pressing. So when you do it here and you do it first, and then you use the ruler to trim it up, then you're helping to improve upon, even remove and erase those human elements. That's the only way that I've been quilting and making hundreds of quilts all these years, is with the very simple method of this basic square and learning how to place the ruler on there. Now, last summer when we started, of course on learning how to make our basic square. So if you're very new to this and you don't know anything, or maybe you're just getting started with this, go back and look for the premium option overviews. The triangle units are numbered, they're in order, they're very organized. So you've got option 1, square and a square. You've got option 2, where you keep sewing around it. You have option 3, flying geese, option 4, half square triangles. And options 1 through 17 are the ones that start out with a square in the middle, or something that resembles a square in the middle, like a 4 patch or a 9 patch, or anything that resembles a square. And that is option 6 that we're going to get into here in just a few minutes. But let's look down here at our book and let's look at what we've already done. So I want you to go back and find the video that is option 1 and the basic square. And in that video, we're going to concentrate on making this basic square. I will teach you all the tips and hints that you need to know about so that you can get these very speedily and very accurately. I can actually make about 75 to 100 of these in an hour, and I have students and teachers who can do that many also. And it's not just all about how many that you can produce in an hour. The cool thing about the Square in a Square system is that it's kind of brainless sewing, because you're just sewing squares and strips together. Then you trim it up, and then you start putting all these different units together. And if you go back in and watch the videos here on the Facebook page, then you'll see how all of this magic just comes alive in all of the different quilts. I have some great quilts to show you today that are going to use the option 6, put anything in the middle. So let's go back down here to our book again. And this is the book, and if you've been following along with the process and working on your book, and so many people have texted and emailed and have said that this has been the best way to learn how to do the system, by just actually learning how to do the basic square, do the different trimmings, learn the system, and then jump in to start making the quilts. It just makes it all come alive for you. It's out like this. I think we start out with about 15 of these in that first video. And then we trim up option 1, and I show you the different quilts. And in the option 1, you leave the 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. And that's basically all we're going to be doing today, is trimming, leaving the 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. The only thing that changes is what's in the middle. It can be a 9 patch, a 4 patch, flying geese. Anything can go in the middle. So this is your square and a square ruler, and you're going to come over here to what I call the right side of it, find the 90, and right where these two lines come together, the tip of the 90, that's what you're going to be putting right into the tip of that corner. Those black lines are going to go right over the seam, and when you trim it up, it leaves that perfect 1/4 of an inch. Now with the glares and the rulers and stuff, we'll show it again. And we'll put it over here on the mat. But notice how the tip of that 90 just goes right into the tip or the corner of that fabric square. Look how your lines go right over the seam. Your grid line goes right through the point. You make your trim. And look how you have that perfect 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And you just rotate the block around. If you have a mat that turns, that's great. And just come back in. Put it in the tip. Trim it up. Now, even if it isn't lining up perfectly, you've got to keep it square where you've already trimmed. And that's part of the magic of the system, is even if you have a lot of human element showing up in a block, you're still going to get a nice square unit and your seam allowances, and it won't matter that this inside where that human element is, if it's perfect or not. And with traditional piecing, if you're not great everywhere, then as you progress on, that just gets more cranky and more crooked. But with the square and a square system, you're going to keep it square as you go. You're going to always have your seam allowances exactly where you need them to be. So this is how you're going to trim what we're going to do today. You can put anything in the middle, and you're going to trim, leaving that 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. So let's look at some units. And anytime you have any questions, just go ahead and post them right here below what we're doing, and I will see those. And if there's any of those that I can demonstrate or go back to and help you with, we'll do that. So something that I think is a must, besides having the square and a square ruler, is the option overview book. This is volume 1. And this is the one that deals with the squares. So that means each option is going to have a square in the middle, and you're going to trim it up. And so it's going to go from option 1 to option 17. And so this is the main book that you're going to work with. Now, in what we're going to do today, you're going to trim, leaving the 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. But you may be starting with, of course, we're going to have the charts in the book that we're going to talk about, but I want to work with just page 15 here of the basic square in option 1. So the center squares can change in size. Now, of course, the charts that start in on page 34 will tell you what size of squares and strips. But if you're kind of out there just doing your thing, like these were just pre-cut squares I put together. I put 4 of those together, and I want to know how wide of a strip to go around it. Well, there's a couple of different ways that you can figure that. You can come in here and measure the square, and from cut edge to cut edge, it's 4.5. I can use that measurement and go to one of the charts. So let's say that we go to the option 1 and the option 5 chart are the same. And right here in the middle column, it says cut center square. Well, I know this cut center square is 4.5. So I'm just going to go down here and find the 4.5. And then you can move left, and it will tell you what size the sewn unit will be, or you can move right, and it will tell you what size of strips they need to be to sew around. So if I'm going to sew strips around on my 4.5 cut, then I'm going to have strips that are at least 2.5 to 2 3/4 inch wide will be the strips that I sew around. And that's how easy it is to use the charts. You can either look in here and find the size of the option you're looking for, or you can come in here and find what your center square is, and it will tell you the size of the strips. So the charts in the book are amazing. You can work with whichever column that you have in your head and work left or right to help you get the measurements. Now also, back up here, I think on page 15, is the basic square and the option 1. And this little magic math right here tells you how to figure strip size. So it says to determine the cut size in the middle. So we've determined that's 4.5. It says to divide it in half. So that would be 2 1/4. And it says add 1/4 of an inch. So that's 2 1/2. So we need to have about a 2 1/2 inch to 2 3/4 wide strip that we're going to sew around each side. And that's how easy it is to start in on just the basic. Now, sometimes people say, oh, I don't want to do any math. I don't understand the math. Just jump in here and start going. The math is just simple 4th grade math, addition, subtraction. Go in and just stick your nose in those charts, those pages where the charts are. It's really very, very easy. We've taken all of the hard work and all of the math away so that you can jump in and get straight to your sewing machine faster. Remember, when you're working with measurements, you have 2 measurements. You have a cut measurement and you have a sewn measurement. And that's where most people get confused on using the charts or how to do it. For example, this week I had a lady and she texted me and she said, I need a 2 1/2 by 5 1/2 inch flying goose sewn. Well, I knew that could not be a sewn size. I knew that had to be a cut size because with a flying goose, the short side, you double it, and that's the long side. So if it was 2 on the short side, the long side would be 4, and that's the sewn measurement, 2 by 4. So when she gave me the 2 1/2 by 5 1/2, I knew that had to be the cut measurement. So the more you get in and work with it, and the more you pay attention to the cut and the sewn, then it's easy. And I always say that whenever you get lost or stranded, or you feel like, okay, I don't know where to start, that's when you email, that's when you text me, go to Facebook, look for a video, private message me. There's no reason for you to be lost or stranded or not have the help that you need. Also, another great way, if you really want to learn the system and you want to start making every quilt, you want that speed and the accuracy, and that is to join the Square and a Square Premium Club. We have hundreds in our Square and a Square Premium Club, and if you just go to our website, squareandasquare.com, and give us your email, we will send you information about the Premium Club. And the videos that are in there are in-depth, they're up close, they're edited, they are needle down, needle down, needle down. Just every stitch is in there. It teaches you how to sew without pins. It teaches you how to work all of these charts. It's everything that you need. It's a full package of videos, and we just keep adding to them over and over again. And like in Facebook, sometimes it's easy to get things lost. But with the Square and a Square Premium Club, we have a special website. We have a special portal. Everything is organized in there. You can go in there and you can watch those videos any time of the day or night and have them very easily at your access and easy to follow. So I highly recommend the Premium Club. And we probably have some Premium Club members watching right now this morning with our live session. And I know they would go in and tell you that it has been well worth their time and their money, and that their sewing ability and their skill and their time have just improved greatly in learning the Square and a Square system and really applying it to all of their quilting and learning it just bit by bit and joining the Premium Club. So let's get back down here to our options, and let's look at what we can do with option 6, put anything in the middle. So you can put anything in the middle, and it would be different than a solid square. It has to be something different than a solid square, but something that is still a square. So I want you to look at this one here that is the 4 patch. See how that becomes the square in the middle, and you would sew those 2 1/2 inch strips around it, leave the 1/4 of an inch, and you would have a 4 patch in the middle with these beautiful triangles on the side. So a 4 patch would be in here. In this one, we put 3 flying geese together, surrounded it with our strips, always trim, leaving the 1/4 of an inch. And in this one, we did the 9 patch. So let's look at the quilts. Let's look at some actual quilts, and let's look at what we're doing here in these. So I don't know if my quilts are in order of my pages, but when you go to your book, your option 6, Imagination Mixing, is where we start. And a lot of the options have hard and fast rules that go with them, but with the Square and a Square option 6, then they can be so many different things in the middle that sometimes there's not as many hard and fast rules. So let's let's work right here with option 2. So this is option 2. See how we have a square in the middle? So around 1 time, trim it up, 2 times, trim it up. So see how you can put anything in the middle. You can do a 4 patch, 9 patch, put anything in the middle and keep surrounding it. And that's really a cool one to do. Then think about if you made stars and put them in the middle, put strips on the side and trimmed it up, then you would have a star inside your square. So think about this with a star in it. How easy and nice that is to add those triangle units to the side. Now on this one, look how we made our option 4, and that means that we do the 2-step trim on all 4 corners. Go back and review option 4, and the trimming is a little bit different than what I showed today. And we're going to cut through there and get the 4, put them together for a pinwheel. Look how great it is to do something scrappy. So let's take this pinwheel and let's put it in the middle. So let me find that sample. So here we go. Here's your pinwheel in the middle. Put the strips on the side, trim leaving the 1/4 of an inch. So your ruler, you're just going to put the 90 right in the tip. The black lines go right over the seam. When you trim, see that 1/4 of an inch? And when you do that to all 4 corners, here's one color version. Look with the dark around, or look at this one with the light. Now this first quilt I want to show you, it is this one right here. So go in and take your scraps. Make a whole bunch of option 4 half square triangles. Put them together in the pinwheel. Then surround them with more scraps, whether they're dark or light. Maybe you want to do light here and dark here. You're going to get a different look with all of that. So let's look over here at the block. So here, do you see the pinwheel in the middle, just like here? And then we did the light strips on the side. And we put it together in a block like a 9 patch. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that becomes a block. And look how beautiful it is. Think about how easy it is to go in and just start with putting lights in the middle, darks on the side, trimming them up to get your half square triangles, and then putting them in the middle and surrounding them to get this. This is a project, this one right here that I'm showing you is really a great project to use as an ongoing project. So every time you finish with a project, you cut your squares, I would say somewhere between 3 and 4 inches, and sew your scraps around them and trim them into your half square triangles and make your pinwheels. And as you get scraps, you just keep working on this progress. This is a great quilt to do with scraps and just keep it going in your sewing room. Then as you get your pinwheels done and the strips sewn around them, then you can start putting them together in this 9 patch version. Now also another thing that we did on this one, and one of the videos that we'll do coming up here, hopefully by the end of the year, is we're going to go in and start talking about borders, about how all of these different units can be borders, how to figure your borders, how you can get beautiful borders on your quilts. You don't have to just sew strips to them anymore. But let's look at the border in this one. Look how we used a separation so that these really show up and these really show up. So it looks like we did like 4 triangles together, which would be our new option 40, but really what these are flying geese. So look right here. Do you see? Do you see how that's a flying goose? And we put 2 together nose to nose. So this is a flying goose, this is a flying goose, and we sew them together nose to nose. So this is also another project that you can just keep going with your scraps and working on a border. So there's 2 flying geese nose to nose. There's 2 flying geese nose to nose. And those just keep repeating in the border. And just scrappy, just beautiful, just pull from your scraps. And look how these come together. It looks like you've done some fancy set-in work here. And this is just simple square and a square work. This is not hard to do with the system. And this is option 3 flying geese. All just scrappy. All start out just like this. And then we're going to sew them together nose to nose. So I love this quilt, the scrappiness, the beauty of it. Do we have any questions I need to look at? So you'll get information when you go in and send in your email. You'll get all the information and details about the Square in a Square Premium Club. There's monthly, yearly, several different programs that you can choose from. You can work from your scraps. You can work from the kits that we offer for the quilts, however you want to do that. Okay, so any questions about this quilt? Really, this is a great one just to sit down with squares and strips. Just look at what you've got and start cutting, and you can just kind of work from there and just kind of start and then just build. Once you know what size of square you're working with, you don't even have to know where you're headed with this quilt. Just cut a bunch of 4-inch squares, sew your strips around them. They would be anywhere from 2 1/4 to 2.5 inches. Cut them into your half square triangles, and then put your pinwheels together. Then you can measure that and know what size of strip that you're. And then when you get this unit made, then you measure it, and then your solid square that you're going to sew next to it, you cut those that size. So you don't have to know sizes and where you're headed. You can sit down and just start sewing. That's what we want to do. We want to just sit down and start sewing with what we've got, and then figure out what you're doing with your sizes as you go along. So great quilt. I love this one. Now this next one here is the Pony Express quilt. And what I want to show you in this one is this border. So what we did, if you can look here, you can see the 4-patch. That's the 4-patch in the middle. See that 4-patch in the middle? And then here's the square. See those triangles, those strips that we put on the side? Trim that into the option 5. 4-patch in the middle. And then when we're sewing these together, these are just straight seams to make our long border strip. This is another border. And notice how the black stays all consistent through the quilt. If you turned it and had the black here and the cream here, you would get a different look. But in this one, we wanted that black to elongate the quilt, and it actually represents the Sierra Mountains that the Pony Express riders had to cross. So look at this beautiful border, 4-patch in the middle. Sew your strips around it to get your square, and then you're just sewing squares together. Now this one, I want to show you, before we move on to the 9-patch, I want to show you another one with the 4-patch. So in this one, here's your 4-patch in the middle, and I want you to look how we sew around it with a light, the dark, which is really kind of a medium, but the contrast, the light, the medium, the light, the medium. And notice how the colors stay consistent so that you start getting a turn. Then when this was trimmed up into a square, we sew around it again, and we make sure that those colors turn. So we make sure that the white or the light is on this side, that the medium stays consistent with the strip. See, these are strips on the side. So that would be like your option 2. So see how you would have a 4-patch in the middle. You would sew around it with your strips and keep your colors consistent. Trim it up, then sew around it again. Keep your colors consistent so that those colors start to turn. And normally when I do a snail's tail, I do it in just the light with 2 darks, but you can do it scrappy, and you also can go around 3 times. If you go around another time, and I think the traditional snails pattern is a 3-time going around, and so that really makes it a tighter turn or a tighter curl in there. And actually over 30 years ago, when I first started working on the square and a square and getting the idea for now what I make and do with the square and a square, all started from this simple quilt here of the snail's tail. So here you can see your 4-patch in the middle, surround it light pink, light print, and then keep your colors going. So there's your square. So this is just going to go in rows. So now I decided I wanted my pink here, so I sew it with my pink. Then I sew, this is exactly the same as this. So these are all the same. So this is a repeat here, and then you do the other color. And then as this one comes down, this one curls. So that's the snail's trails. I always called it snail's tails, but I think it's actually snail's trails. So here it is in just a simple 2-color. Now in the 1930s, the snail's tail was really a very popular color, or a very popular pattern, and they did it only in a 2-color design. So you'll see a lot of this with the light or the Muslim background with kind of a solid blue or a solid yellow or a solid pink. Those were a lot of quilts that were very popular. Now, when you go in and cut your 4 patches here, you're going to have some leftover pieces out of your strata. So I just took those leftover pieces to do the border. And of course, 30 years ago, I hand quilted everything. So this one is hand quilted, and I used the pink thread to hand quilt this. One of my favorite quilts. This quilt is probably about 35, 38 years old. And I just love it. This quilt is actually older than my youngest son. And here it is on the back with the quilting. Just really a pretty quilt. And it really has that old-fashioned look with it being more of a pastel and being hand quilted. And of course with a light on the back. We don't always put a light on the back nowadays. We do more of a print and a color. But with that light background and you were hand quilting, your stitches would really show up. And of course nowadays if you're machine quilting it, your stitches are going to really show up. So let's look at this quilt behind me. This is also a snail's tail. And here you can see this one is machine quilted. This one was made maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. And you can see the 4 patch in the middle. This one, I think actually when you're looking at the whole overview of it, the design stands out so well. It's almost hard to focus your eye and go in on the block of actually where you're starting because the design pops out so well in it. But here's the 4 patch. Sew around it 1 time. Sew around it 2 times, and see how you'll have the snail block, and then you have a solid block, and in this row those are all backgrounds, and then in the next row is when you alternate your snail blocks with your color. And the hardest part of putting this quilt together when you use the square and a square system is keeping your colors in the proper place. You need a design wall or something to put it out so that you know what you're doing. And the snail's tail pattern you can find in your Volume 1 reference book that I had out here on the table a little while ago. Let's move on from a 4 patch to the 9 patch quilt. And this little quilt you can find in the 9 patch book. So if you have the 9 patch ruler, you're going to find this quilt in the 9 patch book. So here's our 9 patch in the middle. Of course, we use the 9 patch ruler so that we get really nice 9 patches. Sew your strips around. And in this quilt, we made sure that the reds were across from each other and the greens were across from each other. And that's really the only color placement that we had besides just the 9 patch. Now you'll notice in the 9 patch that the light is the dominant one, and normally in a 9 patch these are the dark dominant with the light here where the 4 is, and that's a little bit of the difference in here and what gives this quilt a little bit of a different look than a 9 patch. Sew your strips around, trim it leaving the 1/4 of an inch, and then you're just going to sew these in rows. So when you put these in rows, see how your colors are going to match up opposite, and see how the green is on the left here and your green is will go on the left, on the left, on the left, and so on. And see how each row is the same. Your green is still on the left. So you can sit down and sew these without having a design wall, just making sure that the green is always on the left as you're putting them down and placing them together, and then when you sew the rows together. And I love how this little 4-quarter triangle block comes out, and it kind of looks like a 9 patch with the hourglass block, and that this is put on a point when you sew it together. But with the square and a square system, we're just going to make it very simple and just sew them together in a straight. Now the new option 40 that we have, you can go back and watch the videos for option 40 and it will show you these 1/4 square triangle units. That's our brand new option 40 that we just released this year of 2019. So this is a great quilt, and this is what I call an organized scrappy quilt because it was all reds and greens. I didn't care which green was where. I just made sure the red was in a certain location and the green was in a certain location. This has that nice little flange on it, which you can also do here in the binding. Make sure you check out our bias binding tool that's on the video that you can see how to do that and put your flange here all in one easy step. Go in and watch that. Now also in this one, look how we used it for the corner. We really didn't need a pieced border for this one because the just strip borders worked out beautifully, but look how nice it is to put something like this in the corner just to add a little more pizzazz You know, we didn't just finish the quilt and whip it together and sew some strips on. We did the nice little flange that adds a nice little frame of color, and we did the same option 9. I'm sorry, the 9 patch in the middle with the option 6. Use your imagination and put anything. So this was the snail's tail one that we talked about. Now this next one is really a unique one. I always have leftover, I may just work on something. This one was just an applique that I worked on. There's no pattern for this quilt. When I make quilts, I'll have different pieces left over that I use from my option books, or I may have enough of them left over that some people would call orphan blocks, and then those go in a quilt. This is actually an orphan quilt. Everything in here was left over from another project except this flag. I was learning applique at the time that I did this, and I just wanted to make this flag, and it turned out pretty nice. So I thought, okay, what do I have in my stash that I can come in here and finish the quilt? So let's look at what we've got here. So I did an Americana quilt, and I had all of these pieces left over from the Americana, from the strips. I did a lot of quilts when we were teaching option 39, this trumpet block. You can find that in the Diamond book, which is volume 2. And so these were all leftovers from when I was teaching the option 39 trumpet. And then I had a quilt with these little Milky Way stars. These are the half square triangles, option 4. I had a lot of these little stars left over. And then I'm going to show you a quilt where I had this block right here. And I had some of those left over, so I used those in here for the border. A nice wide flange, and then just scraps. I love this quilt. It goes on the back of my couch. I've never taken it to a show. There's not a pattern for it. It's just one that I enjoyed making and just sitting down and playing with what I had and going with it. So let's look at this unit right here. So these are option 3 flying geese. So I put 3 flying geese together, and see how it makes a rectangle? It still has a 90-degree corner. It's not square, but you still put the 90 in the corner and trim it up to get that 1/4 of an inch. Now, normally it would be a nightmare to get these 3 flying geese and then put these triangle units on it and try to make these to go in your quilt. But with the system, it just is very, very slick and easy to do. And there's so much you can do just with this one simple little square. Think about if you put it in the corner of a block, like our Homestead Star. I'm going to show you one of those where we put it in the corner, or even if you just put 4 of them together to make a block. Look how you can go this way in your block. Look how you can go this way. So turning it in your quilt when you set it together will really help create the design. So let's come over here and see what we did. So you can see how it goes down. See how it points down? And then see how it points up, down, and then up. And we made sure that we always looked at the right side, went down, and it goes up. And so that's how we put this one in together on that. Now the next one also uses this. This is probably my favorite quilt using it, and my favorite part of the option 6, this and the snail's tail, because they're just so unique and beautiful and make very intricate quilts. So this is the block right here. So we have our option 6 in the corner. See how those shoot out in the corner. We have our option 18, which is this diamond shape with these long thin points, and an option 1, the very first option 1, leaving that 1/4 of an inch on all 4 corners. So instead of having a plain square in the corner, look what happens when you put these great units in the corner. And notice how they all go out. Now the reason why in this quilt I put them all out is because when I did this next block, see how it has the corners going out? Well, let's go back to this one. See how it's a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a 9-patch block. So the one that's sewn next to it is also a 9-patch block, but we didn't do this. We just did a solid square. So notice how you have this in the corners going out. You have a solid, actually a rectangle. This is a rectangle shape, so these are a little bit of a rectangle. So you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 with the same option 1 in the middle. Let me pull it down. Pull it down for you. There you go. Okay, so here you have the 1, 2, 3 with your option 6 going out, just like we did here. Then we have the option 1 in the middle with the solids. And then we have the corner units again with it going out. So this is a block, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's a 9-patch block. And then we sew it to, let me get it out there for you. So here's your 9-patch block, and we sew it to your actual star block. And look what happens. Look what happens when you sew your blocks together. You get this wonderful little interaction with all of these going in. And so when I was putting these together, I liked the interaction of these going together instead of them all going out and away from each other. I like this look better. But I want you to think about one more thing with this. Not only can you make them go out or go in, but you can make them go corner to corner. So if you did this in the block, turning it like this on each one, this would make a circle. This would make a spinning circle of flying geese. And if you saw that block in a quilt, at a quilt show, or in a book, you would look at that and say, that is way beyond my skill level. There is no way that I can get those flying geese going at an angle to make that circle inside my quilt. Now, there is a pattern on our website that is called Homestead Star, and it's this star here, and it has something different in the corners. But if you want that, that's at least a nice basic place to get started. And then you can just work your math backwards for this and on your flying geese. And if anybody wants to do that, this is actually the Southern Sky pattern, and we can load that Southern Sky pattern as an e-pattern on our website. So I bet after we show this video, people will want that. So if you want it, just go in and email, and Steve will get it loaded up, and he'll let you know when it's ready to go. And this one is called Southern Skies, and you can put these going sideways. I don't know about you, but I just think that's really beautiful. I've always wanted to make a quilt with these going around in the middle. That might be one I have to move up on my list of quilts to make. So let's just kind of review our pieces and kind of where we're at with the... So you can put a pinwheel in the middle. You can do a 4-patch in the middle. You can sew around your units more than one time. You can do a 9-patch. You can do the flying geese. You could even put any block of any kind. You can do a churn dash. You can do an Ohio star. Let me see if there's anything on the back of these. And in your book, it's going to show the snail's tail and the flying goose one is what it shows. And then in your 9-patch book is this one. And then you can also do an option 40, which is the new quarter square triangle. That can go in the block, and that's really a nice look. And any of these are great ones that you can just sit down and start sewing with them. See how you can put this in it, and see how it's going to put triangles on the side. See how it puts triangles on the side of whatever you have in the middle. So this will have you start looking at quilts a little differently. And I always say once you get the square in a square eyes, then you can just start making any quilt. So after you get your pieces made, you can put option 6, imagination, anything in the middle. And this will go in your option overview book as option 6, anything in the middle. So let's look at some ideas that we showed. 4-patch equals snails. 9-patch. We did a pinwheel. We did 3 flying geese. Any block. like Ohio Star or Milky Way star. So see how anything can go in the middle. So when you start looking at a pattern and you see triangle units with something inside, or maybe even the 4 triangle units going together like we showed, look and see what it is next to it, and you can probably do it as an option 6, put anything in the middle. So then as you go along, you can glue your pieces in here and show, and you can make as many samples as you want. Just do a couple of little snail's tails and you can have your samples to go in your book. We put them in the plastic pages after you get your cardstock done. See how you can just slip them down in your plastic pages, put them in your binder, and that helps you learn the options, and you have them all here in order so that you can keep progressing on. Option 40 we stuck in after that one. So our option 6 is going to go right here. We've got option 8 that we worked on and option 40 over here because of the triangle units. So I'm going to put my option 6 here. So what we have left to do to work with our square units after doing our option 6 today, we have option 16, the twist, which is kind of like this where you keep sewing around but you're going to get more of a slant and more of an angle. Well, I hope to do that one here in a few days. And then we also have option 17, which is 3 triangles in a square. If you have your book, you can go in and kind of look at those and look at what's coming forward. Do we have any questions on there, Steve, that I need to answer before we close today?
No southern sky.
Option 6 is going to go right here. Go in and kind of look at those and look at it's alive. So please load Southern Sky. Okay, I knew somebody would love it. And someone from Chile. Yes, load Southern Sky. So Steve, I guess you've got your afternoon work planned out for you. Long-legged star, but I don't usually like the long-legged star, but I like the one with the flying geese. Yes, Bonnie, I agree. This one is really, really pretty, very intricate with that. Sometimes I think people look at just the simple star with those long-legged, and it's very much like this, but you've got those long, and if you've been in the quilt world very long, you realize those long points are really pretty difficult. But with option 18, they're a snap. And so we think about, well, this is kind of a simple unit and it's hard to get those long legs. So we kind of just take that star and dismiss it because you feel like you don't have the bang for the buck for the time that you're spending on it. But now when you can put anything in the corner and add that zip and that pizzazz of those long-legged stars, those option 18s, then it really is cool. And that homestead star where we put something different in the corners, it really does make that quilt with those long-legged points really snap together. So Carol says she just found us. Well, Carol, I'm glad you found us. And if you're new to the Square in a Square system, come back in and start watching all of these videos that we have. Go to our website and give us your email so that we can send you information about the Premium Club so that you can go in and watch the videos any time of the day or night. Learn how we do everything. I have not only do I have the Square in a Square system, which is a very easy system of putting all of these different triangle units together, but I also teach what I call removing the human element and perfecting your patchwork. I call it the science of patchwork. That even after you get all these nice clean shapes made, how we put them together in a block and in a quilt, how to start looking at things differently, how to get your square eyes, how to look at color, how to start dissecting quilts to turn them into all of these different options, how to use your charts so that you can go in and make any size, any pattern that you want. You know, really, once you learn the Square in a Square system, the only thing that you're really looking at when you look at quilts and you look at patterns are the color combinations of how people used color, because all of these designs are just so simple and they're all just really the same. Once you understand the construction of putting basic things together, then quilting is very simple and very easy. And the triangle units with one ruler, one tool, one system, the Square in a Square, really makes it simple and neat. So I hope you've enjoyed your option 6 today. Be sure and go in on your phone, your iPad, whatever it videos that you used to watch, go in and go to your settings and your notifications so that you will get every time I get ready to do a live, you'll get a notification on it. And also, anytime we post anything, then you'll get it. So go to the Square and a Square Facebook page, and that's where you're at now. Hit like, hit follow, set the notifications so you'll get them. And then also go to our website, squarenasquare.com, just all like it's one word, and give us your email. And we also do email teachings through there. And that's where you get your information, and that's how you get signed up for the Premium Club. So, I love to do teaching. I love your watching. I hope you had a great time today and that you really learned a lot. And a lot of what I like to do is just get your creative juices flowing, how to dig into your stash and get started making beautiful quilts with all that fabric that you've treasured all of this time. Don't you think it's time to start finishing your quilts and not just dreaming up ones that you wish you could make? With the Square and a Square, I'll teach you how. Thanks for watching. I'm Jodi Barrows. Bye-bye.